Today I'm joined by Sophie Spencer-Stephens. So Sophie's the Managing Director of ChilliApple, who are a web and app development company, but not an ordinary web and app development company. So hi, Sophie.
Hi Simon, lovely to be here.
Yeah, look, thank you for joining us. So Sophie, for anyone who doesn't know ChilliApple, how would you describe what you do, who you do it for, and what makes you different?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, as you say, a web app and bespoke software development agency. We're based in Tunbridge Wells, down in Kent. And I guess what makes us different is probably the makeup of the agency, our whole ethos. So we were founded around 17 years ago now by two guys called Nick and Lokesh. And basically they founded ChilliApple on the premise of delivering high quality web development work, but at a reasonable price. Nick, who was our founder in the UK, headed up the UK team for many years. And in the UK, we've got all of our client-facing teams, so anyone from project management, design, SEO, all the way through to client services, sales, marketing, that sort of thing. And then out in Delhi, headed up by our other founder, Lokesh, we have got all of our development teams. We've got a really big development team out in Delhi. And I guess what makes us different is everyone works for ChilliApple. We're not outsourcing to India or anything like that, which I think is quite a common misconception. Everyone works as part of ChilliApple. Lots of our developers have worked for us since the company started, so for many, many years. And the real kind of reason for ChilliApple is that we provide our clients, and that can be anyone from startups all the way through to multinationals, with that high quality development work, which is overseen by a UK team, but we're not charging ridiculous prices.
Brilliant. Okay, look, thank you for explaining that. And yeah, it's interesting to know how it evolved and what it's become to today, because it's grown into a sort of a substantial company. And Sophie, like, you've recently stepped up to the MD role at ChilliApple, sort of following a period of growth and also, as I understand, the partnership with Smarter Capital as well. How did you prepare for that transition, and what were the biggest mindset shifts that you needed to make as you moved from, you were the commercial director before, so from commercial leadership into full MD responsibilities?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve. I will say that. So I started at ChilliApple just over 2 years ago, as you say, as commercial director. And really, I was brought in to look at how we do things, how we basically grow the business. So Nick, one of our co-founders, was looking to step aside. He was looking to kind of sell his half of the business. And so when I joined, that was sort of already a conversation that was happening. So Nick and I, from the very beginning, were already talking about that I would take over, as Nick used to say, take over the keys to the train set. So that I was kind of preparing for that. I would say the first year that I was at ChilliApple was really all around reassessing what we did, and really making some changes. So in the first year, we grew the revenue by 30%, which then put Nick in a really good position to make that exit from the business. Smarter Capital came in earlier this year, and that's when I made the step up to managing director. To be honest, for all intents and purposes, for the last kind of few months before that, I'd already been sort of preparing for the role, and had been managing the UK team. But yeah, then kind of moved from more of a sales focus into the running of the UK side of the business. So taking on the client services role as well.
And look, as a business and leadership coach, I often talk about the tension between doing and leading. And from what I've seen, you've driven sort of the commercial growth, and you mentioned it there, that in the first year, what did you say, 30% growth was it in
30%,
that?
yeah.
And now you're steering that broader strategic view.
Mm-hmm.
How do you protect time for strategy as the leader when the day-to-day demands keep pressing in?
Yeah, I would say that's probably one of my biggest challenges, is actually Well, the fact that I already had a job, I then took on Nick's job. So I basically had two jobs. And then I'm also looking at how we grow, where do we go from here? Obviously, Smarter Capital have come on board and they want to scale the business. Understandably, they've got really big ambitions, which is amazing. So that is another part of my job now, is looking at where do we go from here? So where is that additional growth? So we've done 30%, which is great, but actually now we've hit that kind of £1 million in revenue. How do we really scale that and go to kind of multi-millions? So yeah, I would say that is definitely my biggest challenge. And it's something that it is always ongoing. I think having to juggle, and I think for me, it's about prioritizing. I think I like to get into the office pretty early in the morning, and there's a few of us because obviously with Delhi being between 4.5 and 5.5 hours behind, sorry, ahead of us, actually getting in at sort of 7:30, 7:45 in the morning means that I've then got a bit of time before the rest of the UK team start. That's a really good time to catch up on things, and just making sure that I'm kind of prioritizing what I need to do each day. A lot of my days are also booked out with calls, and actually having to find the time around that to then prioritize. I'm really lucky. I've got a really good leadership team around me. Lokesh and I work together really closely as well. So that definitely helps. So it's very much a team effort. It's definitely not just me deciding what we're going to be doing. It's very much a team contribution. But yeah, for me, it's about prioritizing. I also like to get out on time. I'm not someone who works until midnight for sure. I'm definitely an early bird. So having that kind of like, I want to get out of the office, get to the gym. If I need to log on later on, that's absolutely fine. But I think it's just about having that kind of, what's the word? Uh, Sort of, I've always been someone who's quite focused. I don't waste time. I've always been very efficient. And I think it's just about being efficient with your time, really.
Yeah, there was sort of a number of things that stood out to me there, Sophie, that you sort of said prioritize. Yeah, look, we can't always do everything, so we have to prioritize the most important things first. You've obviously got your structure that you sort of said, well, I get in at this time and I make sure I leave on time. You also mentioned going to the gym there. I get, is that your sort of way of switching off? Is that your sort of from the day-to-day work, going to the gym and having a workout?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely a non-negotiable every day that I can, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we all need that. Is that that ability to switch off from work and that and yeah. So there were some really sort of key things that you mentioned there, and I think discipline is something else that sort of came through. And you mentioned with actually you know with the growth of the business and also prioritization. So with those strong growth ambitions, how do you prioritize what part of the business to scale first? For example, is it increasing new acquisition, or is it deepening existing client relationships, building your own, IP, or investing in team capability? I mean, there's so many different things to prioritize. How do you do
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things we did when Smart Capital came on board in the first few months, we had a big 2-day workshop basically where we looked at, and I think this is one of the difficulties that we had with ChilliApple, is we do so many different things because we've got such a large scale team in Delhi. It does mean that we're not just limited to e-commerce. We can also do mobile apps. We can also do bespoke development. And what we looked at then is, okay, what do we do? Where is the money coming from? And where actually has the potential for growth? Because that's the other thing. I think e-commerce has always been our bread and butter. It's always been something that's always ticked over every single month with people on sort of retainers with us. But it's a really competitive area, and it's not something that is growing for us. And it is also something that if I look at, okay, how many e-commerce leads are we getting in? How many are we converting? It's nowhere near what we're converting on, say, the bespoke side, for example. So what we basically did was we looked at all of those different things that we do, which one is profitable. And actually one of the things that we offer is the ability for another business to hire out our developers. So it might be, for example, they've got a skills gap, there's a particular technology they haven't got a developer for. They might just need to scale up their team for sort of 3 months, but they don't want to hire someone for that period. So what we can do is hire out our developers on quite a flexible basis, and basically they just become part of the other business's team. So for us, that's a really profitable revenue stream because there's very limited amount of involvement for our side. There's no project management. There's a very limited amount of account management. So actually, a majority of our costs come from running the UK side of the business. So actually, if we can reduce those costs, that makes sense. So that's where our priority is at the moment. We've had a bit of a turbulent few months, I would say. My focus since kind of June, July time really has been getting the business back on an even keel. And then the plan is from January, that's when we'll really launch that sort of new outreach sales strategy, and really focus on that dedicated development side of the business.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you for sharing that. And in terms of like, let's focus on, you for a second here. What failures or almost failures have shaped you most as who you are? And it could be, perhaps something that you tried that didn't work out, and how did you pivot or learn from that?
Interesting question. Do you know what I would say? I think one of my biggest failures is probably having too much faith in people. I think I, in the past, have been very much, if someone's not doing their job, like give them multiple chances, or perhaps it's just they're just not right for that role. Like it's just not something that's playing to their strengths. And I think my biggest failure has probably been not moving that person on quickly enough. I think it's definitely something that I've learned. Don't try to mold someone into a role that they're not right for. And also, if they're not right for the business, I think in the past we've had people in the business who haven't had that kind of common belief, that common desire to want the business to succeed. And actually, they become negative, they become toxic to the rest of the team. So I think that would be something that I've learned definitely over the last 6 months to a year is if someone's not right, move on, find someone who is a better fit for that role, because I think it ends up just costing you time and money. And I think that would be something that I've learned is to trust my gut. If someone's not right, let's move on, because it probably doesn't feel right for them either.
I think, yeah, look, you're absolutely right. That's the key thing, isn't it? If it's not feeling right for you, as you say, it's probably not right for them, and actually they would be better off in a different role, or even in a different organisation if it's not the right cultural fit or anything like that. And actually, there's three letters that I actually I read in a book, How to Be a Great Boss, and the three letters they use are GWC. Does the person get what the role is? So that's the G. Do they get what the role is and what it requires, what they've got ownership for? The W is, do they want it? Once they get what the role is, do they actually want that role? Because it might be that they actually don't want that. And then the C is, do they have the capability of doing it? And the thing is, if they get it and want it, then the capabilities can generally be nurtured and trained and those sort of things, which is where, you were sort of saying, yeah, give them time to learn and develop themselves. But they can only do that if they get it and want it. They don't
Yeah.
get it and want it, then they're not going to ever build up those capabilities of actually doing it. So, yeah, look, thank you for sharing that. That's a great sort of share. And Sophie, what if you had a magic wand right now? What problem would you solve in the business right now?
Oh, I think it would be time. I think I would give all of us more time. I think we've made some readjustments to the team recently. We've got a really strong team in place now. We've got some amazing people in the business that are doing a really good job. If I could replicate them and have two of them, that would be amazing. I think that is definitely something that we struggled with. Obviously, we're quite a small business. In the UK, there's only 7 of us, so it is pretty small. And I think even though we're quite an established business, it does have that kind of startup mentality sometimes of people do need to get stuck in. You do need to be happy sometimes to pick up things that are not necessarily your job. And I think that's something that we kind of struggle with sometimes is we don't necessarily want to hire somebody else, and we don't necessarily have the budget to hire another person, but there is sometimes people are working more than they perhaps should do, that they're at capacity. We're asking quite a lot of them. And I think that's where I feel really supported by the team. I know they've got my back. I know that when push comes to shove, they will be there, and they will kind of do everything they can to help the business succeed. And I think that's also another learning, is everybody needs to believe in the business, and everyone needs to want it to succeed. So when I first started, there was no sort of commission scheme or anything like that. We had a bonus that was an annual bonus based on profit share, but it wasn't tangible. Nobody really knew how much money they were going to get at the end of the year. It was very much sort of a, well, in April, May time, we get a little bit of money, and we don't really know what it looks like. So one of the first things I did was introduce a quarterly commission scheme for everybody in the business, not just the salespeople, for account management, project management as well. That meant that they were really invested in the business succeeding, so that every month when we're talking about, right, we're this far away from target, everybody's got an incentive to help us reach that target, because they think, well, if the business succeeds, I also get a nice bit of commission as well. So for me, that's really important, that all of the team have something that they're working towards, and it is a common goal as well. So last year we had an incentive whereby when we hit our first £1 million in revenue, we would go away for the weekend, and everyone was really excited by that. We had a brilliant time. And I think that's really important as well, is making sure it's not just monetary, that actually there's an opportunity for the team to get together and celebrate as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to highlight, isn't it? That everybody's got absolute clarity of what that vision is for the business. Where's the business going?
Mm.
And actually, that's a common goal. And that common goal has got to be above anybody's personal interests.
Mm.
So it's got to be more important than anybody just focusing on themselves. You know, if I use that in an example, if you use a football team, the winning of that football team needs to be more important than just one person scoring a goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that one person has got to be prepared to pass it to somebody else if they're in a better position to score the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the interests of the business or the team are more important than that person's, own whatever they want to achieve. But the second thing you mentioned there, which was really important, is an acronym that I use called WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
People will only contribute towards that vision, that goal, if they understand what's in it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And as you quite rightly highlighted down, yes, some of it might be financial, but not all of it. It's personal satisfaction, it's growth, it's career development, it's working on interesting projects, it's feeling respected, feeling needed. All of those things that people will then go, yeah, I want to be part of hitting that common goal, that vision. That's a great share. Thank you very much, Sophie, for bringing that out. And Sophie, there's one question that I always like to ask everybody that's kind enough to sort of join me on this discussion. And that's this: what advice would you give to an 18-year-old you?
This might be a bit of a controversial one, and my parents won't thank me for this, but don't go to uni.
Okay, interesting.
Honestly, I think for me, I think some people obviously have a great experience of uni. I think they get a lot out of it. For me, I think it didn't help me achieve anything in my career that I wouldn't have already achieved. I think we've just hired our first two apprentices. So one of them is a sales executive, one of them is doing a project management apprenticeship. They're 18 and 20, and already they are miles above where I was at that age. They've been in the office environment, they've learnt to pick up the phone, talk to people, send emails. And I just think, wow, like what an opportunity they've got to come out of that with no debt, to come out with a qualification in 18 months' time. And they're sort of 3 years ahead in the working world than where their kind of peers are, who have gone to university and are going to amass a huge amount of debt. I think obviously it depends what you're going to do. If you want to be a doctor, a dentist, all of those things, you need a degree and you need to go to university. But I think there's so many opportunities nowadays. And I think it's a real shame that they're not publicised enough. I think for me, I'm really passionate about empowering younger people and giving them those opportunities. And I know when we were advertising for our apprentices, we didn't have a huge amount of applications, like very, very minimal in comparison to what I was expecting. And I just think when I was at school, it was very much, if you didn't go to university, like what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, there's so many options out there. And I think for young people, just taking those opportunities, like travel, like anything that you're presented with, take it with both hands. I think if it's a mistake, you can always kind of change your mind. Like nothing is final, is it? So I think, yeah, for 18-year-old me, I would have said, don't go to university. But also, I think what I did well at sort of when I finished university was taking opportunities. I switched jobs quite a few times when I was younger, and I've got experience in lots of different areas, which I think has definitely paved the way for my career.
You know, and as you say, it might be controversial, but I completely agree with you. I think, I think university isn't for everyone. I think apprenticeships are a great way for every reason that you've sort of covered there. I think, the job experience, you can still educate yourself. You don't have the massive amount of debt. So I completely agree with you that actually it's actually just looking at what's right for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So look, again, thank you for sharing that, and saying I completely agree with you. And I won't go into it now, but I've got my own views in relation to the education system and
Mm.
how it teaches you to become an employee rather than actually teaches you to become a business owner.
Mm.
And I think more people should be educated in terms of how to become business owners and set up businesses, because that's what keeps the UK economy thriving, small and
Mm.
medium-sized enterprises. So, but I won't go into that now because this will go on for ages otherwise. Well, Sophie, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about your business, but also your journey as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon.